So we got to talk a little bit about Checklist Charlie. Now, Checklist Charlie is a student who knows a lot about Tai Chi and Qigong. In fact, he's got a whole list of stuff that he does every time he practices. When Checklist Charlie does the form, it looks like this. He's going through, doing the movements, but in his head, there's this thing going, okay, first I'm going to do this, and now I come around here, and my hand goes this way, and the elbow drops, and that pulls my shoulder forward, and I work on this whole downward sinking thing, and I come through, and then, or you'll even see, right, going through the movements, and oh, that kind of thing gets in my shoulder, and then when it gets my shoulder, I go to my hip, and my hip goes down to my, and he'll literally stop in the middle of a flow of doing a set, doing the movements, and go through a mental list of all this stuff that's connected. I come around here, and every time I do this, it's just running this narrative and this checklist in his head where he's paying attention to a million different things that go on because it happened once. Or he thought about it, or learned something about, learned about the terminology, or learned this principle from a teacher. And so every time he goes through his practice, he has to talk through this checklist of stuff that needs to be going on. And what's tragic about this, to me, is in this kind of practice, right, I think of it in 3 layers, and we all go through these 3 layers to one degree or another. But the first time you see something, you get an image of it. And then you kind of picture, you see what it is, you need the image because you have to put it in context to understand it. But then what happens next is you start to go through it, you've got the image, you start to do it a little bit, but you still have what I kind of call soundtrack going. You're soundtracking the move, where you're telling yourself, okay, now the hands go down, they come up, I go out, as I'm shifting back, I turn the hips, turn the weight, right? So you go through the soundtrack, and the soundtrack runs in your head. And that's kind of the second layer down after visualizing. The third layer, where you actually want to get to, is that you feel it. You feel the twisting and the turning and the open and close and all the other stuff you're supposed to be doing in Tai Chi. The problem is Checklist Charlie gets hung up either on the visual level, visualizing it all the time, or on the soundtracking level, where he's constantly running it through his head, and he never gets to the feeling level. Or as soon as, this happens, I struggle with this with students sometimes even more. I come around, give them a little correction, adjustment. Oh, what you just did was it... And they go into this whole monologue about what the 2 seconds of what a feeling experience was. But the only way they can relate to it is bringing it back up to the soundtracking level and telling themselves the story about it. So Checklist Charlie, his big problem as somebody trying to learn Qigong and Tai Chi is that he constantly relates it back to this list of stuff he knows about. He doesn't feel, he doesn't do, and as a result, he doesn't flow in his practice. So don't be a Checklist Charlie.